Hello and welcome back to Will, a Wonderful World. We've got new post. Okay. Finally some messages from our random friend over here, who hasn't had any messages thus far. But we still got some stocked up, I guess, with Alicia and Chang Young-min. So we'll start here. The Dancer. At the southeast corner of Hong Kong Island sat the largest and most secure prison in the city, Hong Kong Central Prison. I gave the guards at the entrance the name Warden Chris. They glanced at my stripper outfit, casually flipped through the stuff in my tiny handbag and let me through. No one else was in the warden's office except Chris. There was a radio placed next to the sofa. It was playing some unknown Latin music. Warden Chris's special hobby was likely the only weakness in this concrete fortress. He liked Latin music. Moreover, on the last day of every month, he would invite a young female dancer into his office. None of these girls had ever been seen again. Some people had suggested that they might have gotten new identities to start new lives somewhere else. Others insisted that they were dead. In any case, that was the only information I had managed to gather. The uncertainty made the mission tonight a little risky. Nevertheless, it was the only way for me to approach him. I ignored the warden's leering looks and started dancing to the music. I didn't know the song, but the familiar melody still made me feel nostalgic. For a brief while I felt like I was back in Mexico. I could imagine myself strolling down the street of the lovely Coatepeque, bathing in the warm sunshine, waving hello to everyone, saying buenos dias. I extended my hand towards a warden and shot him a passionate and inviting look. He grabbed my hand. I felt a sudden pain in my stomach. I had to run into the bathroom. For some reason, my stomach suddenly started hurting. It gave me a bad feeling about tonight. If I proceeded with the mission, it was probably not going to go smoothly. My instincts had never been wrong before. A few minutes later, I escaped through the bathroom window. Never force yourself when you are feeling uncertain. Ray had told me that. However, Warden Chris had already seen my face, which meant that I couldn't attempt the mission anymore. But even if we sent someone else, it would be much riskier to follow the same strategy. I screwed up, Ray. Alicia. Well, she did screw up the mission, I guess, but it's not all bad. Officer Ji Jeon was still in the hospital. Meanwhile, Officer Min Jun had not shown up to work for a few days either. Lieutenant Kang had mentioned that he had been absent for health reasons. So he and I were the only active members of Unit 4 at the moment. We were in room 403 of the Sunshine Apartments. But there was no sunshine at all. The room had no furniture except a fridge, a microwave, a simple gas stove, and some bowls and dishes that had not been used in a long time. The thick window shades had blocked all of the light out for months too. The whole room smelled like mold. However, it was a perfect location for surveillance. I quickly set up the telescope and pointed it at a window in the middle of the third floor of the opposite building. I could see through the telescope that a full-figured woman was having breakfast. Her lover was a drug dealer in the Yuseong team of the Musun gang, who oversaw the transportation of all their goods. He was also an important suspect in a murder case from a few days ago, and he hadn't been seen in the past few days. This was my first time partnering with Lieutenant Kang. I had not been in Unit 4 for long, but I had come to learn that it was nothing like the rumors that I had heard. Unit 4 didn't have a lot of people, but it had abundant talent. An amazing marksman, a master of transfiguration, not to mention the lieutenant himself, who was a hidden beast. Lieutenant Kang had told me the truth about what had happened to him during a fight after Officer Jeon was stabilized. He told me that I had met his other personality, named Yong-gyeon. He was a different person altogether. Yong-gyeon was very violent and he didn't have access to Lieutenant Kang's memories. Therefore, for the safety of his colleagues, he would usually only go on solo missions. I couldn't believe it at first. I had suspected that Lieutenant Kang was just yanking my chain because he didn't trust me yet and he didn't want me to know the true source of his strength. However, when I later went to visit Officer Ji-yeon, she had told me about her own experience when she first joined the unit, including the same story about the lieutenant. That was when I finally realized it was all true. Multiple personalities were not common, so the lieutenant had always kept it to himself, especially about where it came from. In any case, This small quirk did not stop me from feeling closer to him. Although he was a weird person with an even stranger temper, he cared about us deeply. Just the other day he had gone screaming at Unit 3 because their men wouldn't shut the bathroom door properly and it was making my seat smelly. It was so awesome. As for the rumor about how no one wanted to join Unit 4, that was a total lie. They must have all just been sent away by the lieutenant. Because they had been too weak. Yes, that must be the case. This was my first surveillance mission since joining the force. The more I thought about getting to be with the lieutenant alone for the next few days, the more excited I felt. I wondered if he would be willing to spare with me. Actually, how about now? Lieutenant Kang, would you like to exercise a little? The doorbell buzzed with terrible timing. I opened the door and a young woman was standing outside. She said she was a freelance writer who lived next door. She saw that there was a new neighbor, so she wanted to come by and say hello. The writer then asked me what we did. She kept asking me a lot of other random questions. There were so many that I became completely lost. I like beautiful women, but I couldn't handle them. Just as I was stuttering hopelessly, Lieutenant Kang came to the rescue. He explained to her that we were brothers, and we had just moved into the city. He was a journalist, and I was his little brother, who was a chef. I couldn't help but give him a look when I heard the last bit. After spending some more time with him, I learned that Lieutenant Kang, while extremely strict most of the time, also had lots of tricks up his sleeves. The writer had not stopped ogling the lieutenant ever since she had first laid eyes on him. See, that was our lieutenant, attractive in every possible aspect. He quickly got rid of her, then told me to keep a close eye on the room that we were watching before he left. He must have gone grocery shopping in preparation for the next few days. I used to hear Officer Min-jun tell stories about how they'd always had nothing but kimchi-flavored ramen. It wasn't particularly healthy, but as part of the mission, I was perfectly fine with ramen. Besides, I love kimchi. However, 20 minutes later, all I could see in front of my eyes was an entire grocery bag of ice cream. My heart was bleeding. How did I forget the lieutenant ate nothing but high-calorie junk food? Officer Min-jun must have bought that ramen himself. I sat next to the lieutenant and resigned myself to my fate. I kept an eye on the mistress while munching on ice cream. I ate an ice cream cone while she was watching TV. I ate an ice cream cone while she was watering the flowers. I ate an ice cream cone while she was making lunch. I ate an ice cream cone while she was taking a nap. I ate an ice cream cone while she was ice creaming. When it was almost sunset, the ice cream was starting to make the ice cream for the night and my ice cream began to rumble. Ice cream, 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 ice cream. The doorbell buzzed at an inopportune time once again. I opened the door. It was the writer again. She was carrying a bag of groceries. You guys haven't eaten dinner, have you? Shall we eat together? I have some extra food. Besides, I would really love to witness the chef's skills. She walked past me and went straight into the house. She changed into a pair of slippers while standing in the doorway and kept peeking around the room. I could tell that dinner was not her real purpose. However, my stomach full of ice cream had me on the edge of a meltdown. Looking at the bag of fresh vegetables and meats, I couldn't help but salivate over it. Wait a second, the chef? Yep, that's you. Was she referring to me? Well, Lieutenant, shouldn't you be responsible for your lies? Nope, all on you. Just as I was thinking about him, Lieutenant Kang came up to the doorway too. He slammed one hand onto the wall with a bang. At the doorway, Lieutenant Kang stared at the writer with a lustful look. What a shame, we've just eaten. Sure, ice cream. Although, I usually go to bed later than my brother here. Wait, what? Who between us always starts setting up his bed before 7 p.m? Can I come over later? I'm not a bad cook myself. Who can cook a milkshake? Well, you could just take the stuff out of the fridge and set them aside for half an hour. To my surprise, the writer seemed really into the idea. In that case, I won't bother you now then. Well, goodbye, but leave the food. As for tonight, I don't sleep until late either. You're welcome to join me for a late night snack. You look so excited that I think you could go on for days without sleeping at all. At last, the writer finally left. I let out a sigh of relief and went back to the window. Oh crap. The person at the bottom of the building was the drug dealer we'd been waiting for. He was about to take off. We rushed downstairs, but there was no sight of him anymore. For the next few days we never saw him show up at his mistress's place. Considering that he had left in such a hurry, he probably would not be coming back anytime soon. Mission failed. Jang-yeon-min. So 2 missions that both failed. And it's now our job to fix both of them. And we do not have a lot of a lot of options to do so. Sure. Nah, that wouldn't work. Let's try this. Interested where this one goes. Who's saying that? Oh, let me go first. The lieutenant rushed into the bathroom after me and he stared at me with a threatening look in his eyes. Both of our stomachs were growling. It must be ice cream. If I said no and just sat on the toilet, it might have gotten my chance to spar with the lieutenant in a second. I might have just... But, never mind, I'd let him go first. I walked out of the bathroom meekly and waited at the door, squirming. Back at the doorway, the writer had already left. We continued our stakeout in the apartment for another week, but we never saw the drug dealer come to his mistress's home. We had to cancel the surveillance. That doesn't sound like an S. Warden Chris opened a drawer and handed me the cash. You may leave now. I returned the way I came in and left the prison. The warden hadn't shown any interest in me at all. Why? Did I give something away? Both bad. Alright. Let's try this. It doesn't work for Jang-yeon-min. That's obvious. Had he noticed my fingernails? He grabbed me, but 4 years of assassin training had made me calmer than a normal person. However, my lack of reaction ironically gave me away. It didn't escape his eyes. He swiftly twisted my left arm and broke it. 4 years ago, Ray had given me a second chance in life. Every day of life I had since then had been a gift from him to me. I didn't know if anything had happened between him and Chris, nor did I care. I would never give anyone a chance to take advantage of Ray. I would rather die than give him up. I bit down and the taste of bitter almonds exploded in my mouth. Well, that sounds even worse than what we had before I did anything. So she killed herself, and the surveillance, well, didn't go great. Let's try this. Warden Chris barged into the bathroom and cornered me. He picked up the fake fingernails that I had just left on the sink. He noticed a fatal smell. 4 years ago, Ray had given me a second chance at life. Yeah. Okay. Well, go. Lieutenant Khan came out from inside of the house, grabbed my arm and led me outside. We ran into the drug dealer who was just leaving from the building on the opposite side of the street. He took a glance at Lieutenant Kang and immediately started running as soon as he recognized him. The guy was pretty fast. We ran after him for a few blocks before we finally trapped him in a small alley from both ends. The next day in the interrogation room, he was very tight-lipped, refusing to answer any of our questions. After half an hour without any progress, Lieutenant Kang stood up and turned off the video camera. He went back to his seat and leaned closer to the table. He whispered to the guy, "How about we make a deal?" A deal? What kind of trick was Lieutenant Kang trying to play now? The guy was apparently as curious as me. He leaned forward, waiting to hear what the lieutenant had to say. Lieutenant Kang pulled out a switchblade. He flicked it open and stabbed into the back of the guy's left hand in one clean move. The guy screamed out loud, but he didn't move, worried about hurting his hand even more. I suppose that even he was unwilling to risk his own life. He finally started talking while he shook in pain. If I answer your questions, are you going to recommend a lighter sentence?" Lieutenant Kang smiled and pulled the knife out. He put it away without even wiping the blood off. After he gave us his statement, the dealer took off his jacket and threw it aside while cursing non-stop. That was when I saw a giant green python tattoo on his left arm. The lieutenant suddenly went quiet. I called his name more than a few times before he finally came back to himself. He stood up, patted me on the shoulder, and before he left the room said to me, "He's yours now. Make him pay." Yeah, that sounded good. You know what? Let's try... maybe not ideal. It must be the ice cream. I sat on the toilet and let everything run its course. I didn't need to hear that game. When I finally got out of the bathroom, both the writer and Lieutenant Kang were already gone. Not until later did I learn that while I was in the bathroom, the lieutenant had seen the drug dealer show up at the home of a surveillance target. He didn't want to interrupt me, so he had gone after the guy alone. In the end, the drug dealer eventually outran him after more than a dozen blocks. If I had gone with him, we would have been able to catch the guy for sure. Damn it, it was all the ice cream's fault. That sounds like a B. Perhaps my passion had infected the warden too. He was beginning to get a different look in his eyes. There was something twisted and dangerous about that look. Feeling a little uneasy, I decided to make my move immediately so that I could complete the mission and protect myself before being exposed. Warden Chris suddenly began struggling to breathe. He fell to the ground while grabbing at his own neck with his hand. His face turned to a dangerous purple color. He would never see the tiny scratch on the back of his neck that was killing him. I calmed myself, took off the poisonous fake fingernails and the excessive dress, and jumped out of the bathroom window. Oh, I see, actually. Okay. What about this? Oh, so he's now coming into the bathroom just carrying Jang Yun-min with him. Go. I had barely pulled my pants up when Lieutenant Kang grabbed my arm, led me out from the bathroom, and kept running outside. We ran into the drug dealer who was just leaving from the building on the opposite side of the street. He took a glance at Lieutenant Kang and immediately started running as soon as he recognized him. The guy was pretty fast. We ran after him for a few blocks before we finally trapped him in a small alley from both ends. The next day in the interrogation room. Yeah, I think this should just go and play out exactly as it did before. So it gives me a chance to drink something. Yep. Exactly the same, word by word. Make him pay. Yes, nice. Alright. More post.
No puedo regresar.
Alicia and Jang Yun-min again. It feels like they have a disproportionate amount of letters as compared to, for example, Spotty or Park Sang-gun or this person over here or Wen Zhaolin. I wonder if this indicates to me that their story has not yet concluded. Probably. Who are you? In the 113th minute, Mario Götze stopped the ball and hit a perfect shot. Goal. World Cup 2014 against who? Spain or the Netherlands? Was it the Netherlands? I can't remember. Argentina, of course, Argentina. Oh, how could I forget? I'm still slightly pissed at that. The incident between Neuer and Higuain. But enough of that. Wait, was that 2014 or was that 2010? I can't even remember. It was over. Game over. Oh, come on. I stayed up the whole night for this. I pounded the table as hard as I could. No one was going to complain anyway. Everyone had already gone home. Otherwise I wouldn't be here watching the final all by myself. Gaokao had been over a month ago. My best friends were all traveling around the country. No, around the globe. One would have to be completely nuts to still be living in the school dorm. Yes, I was talking about myself. Well, Jimmy too. Since my family was moving and... Oh, it's him! Rocky! Was his name Rocky? Probably. Since my family was moving and my parents were both too busy with their jobs, they had told me to stay at school for a couple more days. What was worse, I had to be in charge of moving myself, so I was unable to go out and have some fun. The last summer of high school, wasted. I didn't know what Jimmy had been up to recently. Oh, it's better that you don't know. See, it wasn't even 5 a.m. yet, and he was already gone. Well, we wouldn't be spending too many more days together anyways. Jimmy had said his father's business seemed to be going well now, so they would be going back to Hong Kong soon. I told him I'd like to do a formal send-off for him. By formal, I just meant getting some grilled chicken wings at the grill bar near school. He said it wasn't necessary. What a killjoy. Oh, I was too tired. I decided to eat that apple before I went back to bed. I rinsed the apple off and put it on the desk, but I accidentally knocked it onto the floor. You dare hide from me, Apple? I'm gonna wash you again and you're still getting eaten. I looked down and noticed the basin under Jimmy's bed. It was giving off a faint smell. I had a bad feeling about this. I pulled it out from under the bed out of curiosity. Oh boy. Dear God. I don't really believe in God, but I had to call out his name. It was filled with dirty clothes and stinking socks all submerged in water. I was expecting something worse, to be honest, but this is still pretty awful. And the real problem? Who knew how long those things had been there? I didn't even dare to guess the age of the little mushrooms that were growing and thriving on the clothes. A strong sour smell filled the air. Just like that, it was sitting in the middle of our room for over an hour. Jimmy finally came back. I decided not to go sleep, just so I could confront him about this disgusting thing. I had been staring at it the entire time, and I felt like I might pass out at any moment. Jimmy, did you ever worry about us getting cancer with a chemical weapon like this in our room? Alright, I'll clean it up now. And then he just dumped the entire basin, including the mushrooms, all into the common washing machine. Oh, God. Dear Lord. I had to call out his name once again. Jimmy had always been a great friend, smart, reliable, and loyal. The only problem was that he never cared about hygiene. I'd always considered myself to be pretty messy, but I'd never imagined I would meet someone even worse. I was stunned. Rocky. Even when it's not Jimmy's letters, Jimmy is still being an idiot. Troubles in the middle of the... Doesn't continue? Okay. The weather had been getting warmer. I sat on the roof of the classroom building, watching the boys down on the basketball court. They were trying to compete to see who looked the coolest while making a shot. So childish. A few days ago, photos of me and Mr. Wen had been posted on the school BBS and it had gone viral in school. I had to explain the whole thing to Miss Yang and even the school supervisor. People in the school eventually learned that we were just neighbors and we had not been living together. Still, there were some trashy people who insisted that it was not a coincidence that we were living so close. There were even some more blatant people who would follow me after school. However, those people were not going to get anything, because ever since that day I had not seen him myself. He hadn't come to school, he hadn't been home, the lights had been off every night. I didn't have the courage to go and knock on his door, even though it was right next to mine. Maybe he had moved away? Since I'd brought him too much trouble? Just when my mind was racing all over the place, I got a text message from Jing. Breaking news, Mr. Wen is back. The art class this afternoon will resume as normal. I couldn't believe my eyes. However, he must have gone missing all these days because of the photos and everything. If I went to his class, wouldn't people in class gossip about us? Then I would be causing him even more trouble. But if I didn't go, people would still be gossiping, right? What should I do? The dessert today in the school cafeteria was yogurt. I opened a cup, but then didn't really have much of an appetite for it, so I just left it on the table. It was so hot today. I moved my hand and knocked it over. The yogurt spilled all over the floor, making a big white mess. I took out some napkins and wiped the floor absent-mindedly. By the time I was done, the art class was already over. I lay on the roof, staring at the grey sky. Another text from Jing. The classroom was full today. You should have been there to see how I shut those people up for bad-mouthing you. Oh, and at the end of the class, Mr. Wen tore up everybody's sketches. This man. I probably should have gone to the class. What should I do about the class the day after tomorrow? Li Wen. Alright. Hey, I just realized. Have Jimmy and Rocky both graduated from high school already? Li Wen's letter was about something that happened not long after the previous incident. She must still be in high school, right? You're right. Even though the letters arrived together for us, the events they experienced might not have happened at the same time. In fact, they could have happened days apart, or months, years, even centuries apart. For us, time is not an absolute concept, it's only relative. When we receive the letters is purely determined by the causal links among them. For example, we have received a letter saying that Jimmy would be going back to Hong Kong after graduation. That means this event was already bound to happen. I see. Okay. Okay, the yogurt had gone bad. Alright, let's knock it over. Alright, let's try this out. I'm curious what comes of that. Jimmy had always half-assed everything and he had never followed through with anything. He would never learn if I didn't teach him a lesson this time, plus I really couldn't stand this any longer. His dirty clothes and the mushrooms had spilled on the floor, with the smelly water flooding throughout the room. Here came the star of the show. Jimmy just walked in. He let out a grunt of surprise and immediately walked over to his bed to pick up his precious gaming console. He even stepped over a few mushrooms. You win. Jimmy recognized my anger and started cleaning the room without a word. As long as he had learned his lesson. Achievement gets. The yogurt tasted kind of strange, or stranger than usual I should say. Well, if it had gone bad, that would actually be great for me. I could just go and hide in the infirmary with a stomach ache as my excuse. With such a legitimate reason, nobody could say anything else about me. I held my breath and drank the whole cup. Don't. The art classroom was on the way to the infirmary. I couldn't help myself, so I snuck up to the back door and tried to peek inside through the small glass window. Rocky was sound asleep, drooling with his mouth open. Oh, so Rocky actually goes to the same class. Okay. Jing was so focused, Mr. Wen would be insane to tear up her sketch this time. Wait, didn't Rocky... I'm thinking back right now to like one of the first messages we ever got. Wasn't Rocky the big guy that was getting angry really quickly? That was in one of the first letters from Li Wen, in where we had to control whose drawings were getting torn up. I feel like that might have been him. I just never made the connection between him and the Rocky in Jimmy's stories. Mr. Wen was standing with his back towards me, looking at Jing's sketch. He must have liked it to be looking at it so closely. I stood up on my toes and tried to see her sketch for myself, but he suddenly turned around. Thank God I crouched down just in time. However, the sudden movement must have caused my stomach to start hurting. It felt like it was a bad cramp, and it was getting worse and worse. Well, I mean, you did drink bad yogurt. I leaned against the door and crumpled. I felt like I was dreaming. In my dream, he was carrying me on his back and asking me where I wanted to go. I said I wanted to go and see the rainbow on Shuanglong Mountain. I heard that the rainbow was gorgeous there. He said okay, but Shuanglong Mountain was hard to get to. Even taxis wouldn't take us. So Mr. Wen kept carrying me on his back and he kept running and running. I fell asleep in the dream too. But did we ever get to see the rainbow or not? Nevertheless, it didn't really matter. I just wanted the dream to last a little longer and longer and longer. Okay, that was quick. Sure. That was Rocky's only message, apparently.